Alright, so this is a bit of a combined course because I find sections 2.2, 2.3, and 2.4. Once you figured out one of them, you've learned them all. Yesterday we talked about 2.2, which is just the tangent ratio. Today we're also going to talk about the sine and cosine ratio. So, as you go through this, we taught you the three acronyms, SO, CA, and TOA. The key things to remember is what they each stand for. So SO is to help you remember that sine theta equals your opposite divided by the hypotenuse. CA is supposed to be cos theta is equal to the adjacent divided by the hypotenuse. And TOA, we already know, which is tan theta, opposite divided by adjacent. The hardest part for students when it comes to trigonometry is picking the right formula. For each of these scenarios, you should know one of the two pieces of information. So when you're approaching a question, you're always going to label it, and you're going to figure out what formula you're going to use. So in this situation, I gave you almost the same question 3 times. So when you label it, again, we know that this is the hypotenuse, opposite of our main angle. This is going to be the opposite, and left over is the adjacent. Okay, that was from last time. Hypotenuse is always your longest side. Your opposite is always the opposite of your angle, and the adjacent is the last one. You then have to pick your right formula. So you're going to look at the information we know and what we're trying to find. So what basically uses opposite and hypotenuse? The adjacent we don't care about. So if we look back at our formulas, opposite and hypotenuse. Oh look, opposite and hypotenuse. We know we're going to use the formula sine theta equals the opposite over the hypotenuse. If we do that again for question number 2, we know the angle, we know the longest side, we know this is the opposite, and we know this is the adjacent. Again, we're looking for one that has hypotenuse and adjacent. We don't really care about opposite. So, opposite, don't need it. Adjacent hypotenuse, adjacent hypotenuse. So we know we're going to use cos theta. So cos theta equals the adjacent divided by the hypotenuse. And your last one, again, when you label this, we know this is the hypotenuse, this is the opposite, and this is the adjacent. Again, don't need hypotenuse, see if you can remember, so TOA, opposite and adjacent, we know this is tan. So tan theta equals the opposite over the adjacent. And by the end of this, you'll be pretty quick at getting these, and it'll be pretty much second nature. So picking the right formula. Step 1 is always going to be label your triangles, and you need to know how to do this. If you don't, go back and look at the last video, double check. And once you've labeled the formula, once you've labeled your triangle, you're then going to pick the correct formula based on the two things, or either what you know or what you're trying to find. Once you've done all that, sine and cosine, you treat them the exact same way as you do tan. So, in our scenario here, we have a triangle. We know it's at 30 degrees. The opposite side is 14 meters. We're trying to find our unknown. So this is our hypotenuse. This is our opposite. Not that it really matters, but this is our adjacent. It's always good to start out with your formula. So we know that it's going to be sine theta because we have the opposite, and we're trying to find the hypotenuse. When you fill this in, we can go sine of our theta, which is 30 degrees, equals our opposite, which is 14 meters, divided by our unknown. The shortcut when you have your unknown on the bottom and you know sine theta is you can swap these two. So you're left with our unknown equals 14 meters divided by sine of 30 degrees. Now, I'd really only recommend doing that if you're good at math. If you struggle with math, there's nothing wrong with doing it the slow, methodical way. So again, if we start over, sine of 30 equals our 14 meters divided by our unknown. What you're going to do is multiply both sides by your unknown, because the end goal is to try and get it by itself. It's still not by itself, so we're going to again divide everything by sine of 30. once you've done that, our unknown equals 14 meters divided by sine of 30. Kind of like what we had up here. When you punch that into a calculator, we should get 14 divided by sine of 30, which means our unknown side should be 28, in our case, meters. One calculator error I find usually happens is some people have a front-loading versus a back-loading calculator. If that's the case, what you want to do is you want to find sine 30 first and say, hey, sine 30 is 0.5. So rather than type in sine 30 into the formula, you're going to go 14 divided by 0.5. Oh, divided by 0.5 to get the same answer. 0.5 isn't too bad when it's a awful answer like, 0.998. You have to write all those decimals. It gets a little bit more miserable, but it does work, and I'd keep at least 4 or 5 decimal places. Preferably more the better. Again, it's all about rearranging the formula. The math behind it isn't too bad. Trigonometry, if you follow the right steps, you're usually pretty good. It's the rearranging that students kind of run into the most issues. Cosine, you follow the exact same thing. So step 1, label your triangle. Again, this is the hypotenuse, this is the opposite, and this is the adjacent. I find most students, trigonometry is very frustrating and tricky until it kind of clicks into place. And as soon as it clicks and you understand the pattern, it almost becomes monotonous and too easy because it's just the same thing over and over and over again. Until it clicks, though, it's just frustrating. So we're going to pick our right formula. In this case, we know it's going to be cos because we're looking for the hypotenuse and we know the adjacent. So we fill in our formula. Cos theta, in our case, is going to be 37 equals our adjacent, which is 20. We'll divide that by our unknown. Just like last time, we can do it the long way, or we can do the shortcut with our unknown and go cos of 37. Oops. We're going to go our unknown equals 20 divided by cos of 37. So 20 divided by cos of 37 gives us an unknown side length of 25.0427. Alright. So, as of right now, that's not too bad. What's going to happen, though, I'll give you guys an answer first. We keep rearranging where our unknown is on the bottom, but what happens when the unknown is on the top? So I'll give you a very similar question. In fact, we're going to write it out real quick here. We'll say this is 37 degrees. We're trying to find the adjacent, and we know that this is going to be, we'll give a nice number like 30 meters. You label the whole thing, so again, longest side, this is the hypotenuse, opposite, but we don't really need, and the adjacent. Adjacent hypotenuse, we know it's going to be cos, so we're going to go cos of theta equals the adjacent divided by the hypotenuse, and now we start filling it in. Cos of 37 equals our adjacent, which we don't know, divided by 30. In this situation, there is no shortcut. Don't do any shortcut because our unknown is on the top, and we're just trying to get it by itself. So to get rid of dividing by 30, we times both sides by 30. These ones are actually a little bit easier, if anything else. And then at that point, you just plug in your calculator. Depending on your calculator, sometimes it's easier to do the cos 37 first to give yourself that answer. If you float that answer and just times that by 30, you run into a lot less errors. So we know that it is now 23 point, we can just round that to 24 meters is our unknown side. So if your unknown variable is on the top, it's actually easier than when it is on the bottom. It's not usually too bad. Okay, that's it. 2.2 to 2.4 is relatively easy once you understand how you're supposed to be doing basics for trig. You kind of get good on a roll. If you run into any issues, again, Tuesday and Thursday. For you guys, it'll be, I believe, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I will set up a meeting for us so we can all hang out. And if you have any questions, please ask. If you're confused, please ask. For right now, the Google Classroom questions, so again, only going to be 2 of them. The first question is you have to solve for the unknown side. We know that this side is 40 and this is 18 degrees, not 180. And for question 2, unknown side, this is 19 meters and 40 degrees. Again, if you're going into Pre-Cal 11 next semester, I strongly recommend the homework questions I would normally assign, which would be page 82, questions 3, 5, and 9. It's not for marks, but if you're struggling or you want to learn more about this, you're more than welcome to try it out. Good luck.